Started. So, yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Johnny Cheng. I'm the founder of AIX Education and your host and moderator for this session. So, a little bit more about AIX Education. We're a student-run initiative that focuses on centering the conversation around the future of education, but from the more learner-first perspective. We will spotlight real experiments, practical applications, and what people are actually trying in the classroom so that more of us, like students, educators, builders, we can imagine what the future of education might look like together. And today's webinar is called Reimagining Learning, how AI and PBL can empower the next generation. And we are specifically focusing on how project-based learning, when we pair that thoughtfully with AI, can actually deepen engagement and also help students develop real-world confidence with a sense of purpose. So we are really thrilled to be joined by Dean John McNeil and Professor Kirksel Roos from the WPI School of Engineering and their students, Max and Chris, who participated in this experimental flipped classroom course combining AI and project-based learning in a really fresh way. And here's how the entire session will run. We will have the first 35 minutes to be presentations from our speakers, and then we will open up a 25-minute Q&A from everyone. So feel free to drop any kind of questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer it real time and at the end of the Q&A as well. I'll be keeping an eye on all the questions and curating everything to have that questions answered at the end of the during the Q&A session. And if you are comfortable, we'd love to see your faces. So feel free to turn on your cameras and say hi in the chat and introduce where you're joining us at. So yeah, let's get started, and I'll hand it to Dean McNeil to kick things off.
Well, thanks very much, Johnny, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today. Why don't we just get right into it? I will tell you what we're going to be talking about in the next 35 minutes. There's a lot to cover here. We're going to start with an overview of project-based learning as we do it here at WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Essentially, we're motivated by the world our graduates are graduating into, and now that that world is changing so quickly, we need to look at how we're delivering the education we do, how the workplace is changing that our students will be entering, and that motivates the experimental course combining project-based learning and artificial intelligence that Professor Moose delivered this past term, and that students Max and Chris will be telling us about their experience in that course. So project-based learning, some context at WPI. It actually goes back to 1970. We've been delivering project-based learning at scale for over 50 years. And the motivation was really feedback we got from alumni who found that the preparation in a traditional engineering curriculum was not aligned with what they needed to succeed in life after graduation. Working in the real world, you're part of a team, not an isolated learner. Professions require integration of knowledge, not the narrow, long disciplinary corridors of the traditional engineering curriculum. In the traditional curriculum, you followed a path that was prescribed for you by the accreditor, but in life, you need to take personal responsibility for setting your goals. And success in life is more about asking the right questions in unstructured situations than getting the right answers to structured problems with a number in the back of the book. So we implemented project-based learning across the curriculum, a senior year capstone for integrating knowledge across disciplines. That's required now in all ABET accredited engineering programs. We also have a junior year project integrating technology and societal needs and impact, a broad education with a humanities and arts requirement that has a project components of its own, and we have projects integrated in courses throughout the curriculum. We've been doing research on the impact of projects on student outcomes since the 1980s. The first wave of research in this area showed that indeed, capstone projects help students learn discipline-specific knowledge. The second wave of research going back to the 1990s is about professional skills, communication, documentation, system-level design thinking, skills that our students learn in the project environment. And in 2024, Kimberly Le-Chasseur and a number of other co-authors here at WPI published a paper at the American Society for Engineering Education National Conference, going to yet a third level, showing how capstone projects help students build self-efficacy. Looking at the capstone project at WPI, it's equivalent to 3 courses. It takes place across most of the senior year. Students work in teams, 3 to 4 students usually, with faculty guidance. It's about applying the disciplinary knowledge to a professional level, open-ended challenge. Students always ask at the beginning of these projects, Professor, do you know the answer? And we don't. We let the project evolve the way real projects do. It's a culminating integrative experience, and it's required of all students in all majors, not just engineering. And it helps develop skills needed by all professionals. So the research questions we looked at were, given that this experience requires more faculty and student time than most institutions, is it worth it? Does it really contribute to the development of professional skills, career success, and self-efficacy? And if so, what's the relative value of the contributing factors in the educational experience? So looking at 2 dimensions of preparing students through projects, one is the impact on developing professional skills that I mentioned earlier, problem identification and solutions, self-education, communication, working in teams, but then also having the confidence and self-belief to put those skills into practice, self-efficacy to believe that you can contribute ideas to a group effort, that you can make a difference, taking responsibility for your own learning and learning skills needed in the real world. And the 3rd dimension is that skills and self-efficacy reinforce each other. Having both really increases impact on student success. So we surveyed our alumni going back to 1980 all the way through 2019. 2,100 alumni responses, 62% of them were in engineering fields. The remainder were mostly in sciences, so 98% STEM disciplines. Asked them about their experience at WPI, projects, project work in courses, and development of professional skills. Then we asked them about aspects of life and career success after WPI. How did they use those skills? Did it lead to career satisfaction? And we asked them about measures of self-efficacy. We had 5 questions in the survey that we combined to get measure of self-efficacy, success in business or industry, functioning effectively in the real world, taking responsibility for their own learning, feeling that they could make a difference, and feeling that their ideas are valuable. And Kimberly Lechasseur, who's our social science researcher, used a technique to work from the respondent information using linear regression modeling, looking at the inputs and the responses, then determine weighting factors that describe how much each component of the student experience contributes to measures of success in the particular outcomes we're looking for. So for example, we asked students, what was the impact of projects on skills for using information? And in this particular demographic, the response on the 4-point Likert scale was 4.39, which is between good gains and great gains in improving skills for using information. So as we plug in responses on demographic information, experience in major courses, project-based learning in courses, the humanities and arts project, the junior year project, and the senior year project, we can determine how much each of these components contributes to the overall outcome. So first of all, just in terms of career success and personal development, when we ask the alumni about developing stronger personal character, viewing issues from a different perspective, the connections between technology and society, positive impact in solving problems, positive impact on success in business or industry, and functioning effectively on a team. 89 to 94% reported positive outcomes from project-based learning at WPI in success throughout their life. So this was really great for us to see, to verify from our alumni's experience in the real world that project-based learning is working for them. Then we were able to dig in a little more and ask, what's the contribution of the capstone? What's the relative value of all the contributing factors? So looking at professional skills again, skills for using information, teamwork skills, communication skills, all of these scored very high on that 5-point Likert scale. And this confirms that second wave result. The capstone is the largest contributor to building professional skills. It turns out to be more important than major courses. And that's consistent with that intuition that faculty had 50 years ago, that you need more than courses in a major for students to succeed in the real world. So moving to add that capstone project as preparation for a professional career was a solid move to make, and that's borne out in the experience our alumni have had. But the other projects are important also. That junior year technology and society project is almost as important as the senior year capstone, and the other experiences are important as well. Looking to that measure of self-efficacy, the new third wave result shows that the capstone is also a significant contributor to building self-efficacy. And what's interesting about this result is that the influence of identity has a weighting factor of 0. Students from all demographic identities see value in self-efficacy improvements from engaging in the project-based curriculum. So to summarize the history of project-based learning at WPI, over 40 years, our alumni report significant positive effect on developing professional skills and self-efficacy. They reinforce each other for positive impact on career success. Self-efficacy goes from basic skills such as task completion and planning through attaining life goals, determining where you're going to go in interactions with others. And we feel that as the future of work in engineering becomes more dynamic, it's always been dynamic, now it's even more so, when our graduates have professional skills and the belief they know what to do in any situation, they're more ready for the rapidly evolving future of work. Looking at that workplace that our students are entering, it's changing rapidly, as we all know. The impact of AI tools, there's a real debate. Is it a job creator or job destroyer? I was just on a panel at a conference here in Boston last month on this topic. We look at the concept of future-ready engineers. It's very difficult to predict the future, especially in the AI world when things are changing so rapidly. The framework we're looking at now in our School of Engineering is students need to be comfortable using AI as a tool. Generative AI as a partner in creative design, agentic AI to automate routine tasks in design, but still students need the fundamental knowledge, judgment, critical thinking on the AI results to make sure they're getting valid contribution to their design effort. So what's the role of higher education in this landscape? Engineering education is still critically needed for workforce development, for national security, for the economic mobility, the benefits that our students get in good paying engineering jobs, and for global competitiveness. And there's still a role for broadening access to engineering careers. This has somehow gotten this reputation of lowering the bar. Broadening access is not lowering the bar, it's widening the path. A phrase that I've heard that I really agree with: all with the will and the skill should have the opportunity. We need to design our curriculums and our student experience so that everyone who has the will and the skill should have the opportunity to succeed in an engineering career. In addition to the workplace changing rapidly, the educational landscape is changing rapidly. And since PBL was developed to be relevant for the workplace our students are going into, how do we make sure PBL can stay relevant for an AI-rich workplace? And to look at this, we'll look at the evolution of learning styles and also this paradigm for education, Bloom's taxonomy. Some of you may be familiar with. It's not universally applicable, but it is a good framework to consider sort of this hierarchy of education, starting at the bottom of just remembering and understanding facts, up through application and analysis, and eventually at the higher levels, evaluating design and creating new design. We're always trying to move students up to higher levels of this taxonomy. And looking at the evolution of learning technology and technology in general, going back to the 1980s, the evolution of students and their learning styles turns out to be very well suited to AI today. If we go back to Gen X, born 1965 to 1980, the dawn of the PC industry, learning was very traditional in those days. Lecture-based learning, textbooks, physical libraries, maybe you got some work experience in an internship, but the way we think of educational technology today, it just really didn't exist. Traditional but evolving methods, but still very much an instructor-based student experience and very low on that hierarchy. It's about memorizing information, spinning it back on the test. Moving to the 1990s and the millennials, the rise of the internet, we start seeing search engines and information being more accessible. Lecture-based learning starts on the way out. It's still very much present in many places, but now we start seeing project and problem-based learning coming in, more motivation from the real-world problem you're trying to solve. We start seeing active learning, flipped classroom environments, collaborative learning, more projects, and in the problem and project-based environment, we're moving up that hierarchy to knowledge and how to use information in these problem-based environments. For Gen Z, AI tools start becoming more available. The internet, mobile phones are ubiquitous, content generation and distribution more accessible, more self-learning resources, and now we're more student-centered in the project-based learning environment. More advanced projects are enabled by the increased information availability. Now we're moving further up that hierarchy where it's clearer that creativity and innovation are more valuable. And now with large language models, powerful portable devices, our students are digital natives. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants AI-powered personalized learning. Students have a shorter attention span. They're easier to distract. Passive learning is out. Active self-learning is in. And creativity and innovation are essential for success in the real world. So we feel the capabilities of AI as an educational tool are well matched to the demands and the needs of the next generation of students. So if we use AI properly, we can enable this move from the instructor-based experience to a student-led experience. And this turns out to align well with the workplace our graduates are entering. This debate about AI being a job creator or a job destroyer, I hold this vision of human-centered AI, where artificial intelligence can amplify or augment human abilities as opposed to displacing human abilities. But there are some jobs that will be displaced by AI at the lower level of that hierarchy. Understanding, remembering information, that's going to be displaced. The job creators that are enabled by AI are where you're amplifying and augmenting human abilities. And we want our students to be ready for this workplace. So the rest of the presentation, Professor Moose is going to talk about how project-based learning can continue benefiting students in this changing landscape, telling us about this experimental course offering that he's just concluded, combining project-based learning and artificial intelligence. So I will stop my share and hand things over to Professor Moose.
Hi all, let me share my screen here. Are you able to see my screen here? I believe so. Yep. Okay, hi. So thanks, John, for the presentation. And by considering what John mentioned here, in this part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about one experimental trial of how we can evolve course offering to meet the expectations and needs of stakeholders. I'm going to talk about my undergrad level experimental course offering in this spring term, and in which I integrated AI as a supporting mechanism to students. I'll start with rationale behind this experimental course setting, then I'll continue with how the course was structured. I'll continue with our findings on the specific course offering and ways to improve based on the students' feedbacks. I believe Chris and Max are going to share their experiences with us as well. So in the setting, I consider three important stakeholders to summarize the crucial expectations. The first one is the industry, the second one is the students, but mostly I consider Gen Alpha for this specific case. And lastly, the higher education institutions. So the expectations of industry from the graduates are mostly the teamwork skills, and they are expected to spot the problems. They should improve existing solutions and flexibility to be able to ability to keep learning as technology evolves quickly. Employers also expect students to communicate their work clearly, both in writing and presentation. And finally, there is a growing expectation that they understand how to use AI effectively in their work. And the students, At this time, next generation of students is coming with a whole new set of expectations. They are looking for learning which is interactive and engaging, not just lectures. They expect technology to be a part of their experience, and they respond well to visuals and multimedia content. They thrive in environments where they can collaborate, learn socially, and follow personalized paths. They want to understand how their learning connects to the real world problems. And they also value autonomy, to ability to take ownership of their work and receive instant feedback so they can ensure that they are on track and improve quickly. As educators, our goal is to elevate student learning outcomes in higher education. We don't just want them to graduate with content knowledge. We want them to develop their skills in problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking. We are aiming to nurture innovation skills and help them build self-efficacy so they feel confident in their own learning journey. Ultimately, we want them to be ready for the industry faster and to know how to amplify their own learning, because in today's world, lifelong learning is not optional, it is essential. And all these expectations from higher education also aligns with what John mentioned in the first part of this presentation. So let me start by sharing how I structured my experimental course in the spring term. So I divide every module into 3 parts across 3 meetings in different settings. In the first meeting was a pre-class session where I met with just one group of students. This time was meant for them to explore the topic more deeply and begin preparing their group presentation. I gave them a head start and a chance to shape their ideas and before presenting to the rest of the class. Oops. Yeah, they have access to all the course materials for the module and like slides, videos, and academic materials or book chapters. They're also, more important, they're also allowed to use LLM tools for their of their own choices as a support mechanism, which means they are able to use LLMs as they like. And their assigned project was to choose a cryptographic system, and they are supposed to tweak these systems in a way that they are going to set a goal and they are going to tweak their system to set these goals. So this can be anything like making the system more efficient, more secure, or whatever they want to improve it. But they need a reasoning or they need a justification for their tweaks. And then after a week of this first meeting, we have our second meeting with the whole class in person. And so in the first part of the class, the instructor, me, I gave them a high level of overview of the module subject. And I talk about the key concepts and the connection between these concepts, etc., which takes around an hour at the beginning of the class. And in the second part of the class, this presenter team of the week presents their work, including their objectives, their design, how they tweak it, why they tweak it, those type of details. And in the third part of the class, the audience, students, they are in charge of finding the weaknesses in the system. And so therefore they ask their clarifying questions. And they also, after the clarifying questions, they talk about the first impressions of this project. And also they start with starting ideas of what can be the common problems in this project can be. And they had after this meeting, I shared all the recordings of this second meeting with the students. They already had the lecture materials, other lecture materials. And this presenter team also shared a report explaining the details of the project. And if there is any supporting materials such as codes or links, they also shared these materials with them. And it takes us to the third part of the third meeting, which is the asynchronous part of this course. And during this week, they work on their ideas, how they can break the system or what type of weaknesses they have in the system, etc. And they have online meetings, online discussions. And the presenter team was in charge of these discussions. And they lead these discussions. And then at the end of the week, in the next meeting, the class start with these presenter teams summaries, so that they talk about what are the main takeaways from this work and what was the main attacks or main weaknesses in the system. And then it finished the first part of it finished the module. And at the end of the module, all the students evaluate the work that presenter team did. And they also had, if there's any follow-up discussions, they also had the follow-up discussions. So when we finished the course, WPI's Morgan Learning and Teaching Center help us to evaluate the course. So actually, which has a special name, which is called a scope program, in which a student partner comes to class and did some evaluations with the students, and they provide me 3 different reports. The first one was the report for the Canvas page, the learning platform that we are using, if that was clear enough, etc., etc. And in the second report, this student observer came into class and observed the classroom environment and give me a report about it. And in the third one, actually, that was the most important one for this presentation, because in this last meeting, the student partner meet with the students and create a focus group and ask students some questions that I'm going to present in the following slides. And she prepared a report for me to see the weaknesses or the strong sides of this course offering. So we asked them 7 questions. In the first question, we asked them, in this class, what helps you learning? And student mentioned that they enjoyed the presentations. They also enjoyed the collaborative learning altogether. And they also enjoyed the open discussions and positive feedbacks. And in the second question, we asked them what aspects of the course would like them to see the change. And they mentioned that they struggle to navigate themselves in the subject that they see for the first time, especially in the third part, in the asynchronous part or asynchronous portion of the course. And they would like to get more feedback from the student, from the instructor or the students in a different setting. And some of them also bring the problem that sometimes that was hard for them to motivate themselves to go and work on this problem because they have lots of work. They also have other ongoing projects and courses. And in the third question, we asked them, what does instructor do to help you learn? And they mentioned that in class sessions, the guidance from the professor was very helpful. And they also like the feedback from the people, and especially the constructive feedbacks help them to learn more. And in the fourth question, I asked them how can the instructor improve their learning opportunities. They bring the idea that there should be more meetings, more check-ins, and there should be clarity around the expectations. But I believe the format of this course was formed around there is no clarity, because mostly it focused on the personalized learning of the students, which means there should be some expectations, but they should not be very clear, because they're going to do their own research and they're going to learn by themselves. Anyways, and so we also asked them, compared to other courses, how did the format of this course impact their learning? And they mentioned that they enjoy the learnings compared to other courses, because they like the open-ended discussions, and they like the freedom of their own research. And we also asked them how this format increased their development of creativity and self-efficacy. And students reported that actually it increased their learning and creativity and self-efficacy more than the other courses. And they also mentioned that thinking outside of the box, which means thinking freely on their own work, helped them motivate working more on the problem. And yeah, our last question was, how did AI impact their learning process during the course? And they mentioned that actually it speed up their learnings, and they also discovered new ways to use AI. And they also mentioned that AI helped them to find what to focus on and what to look into in their own projects. So based on the students' feedback, I checked if we were able to meet the preset requirements or expectations from the three stakeholders. And actually, these R's on the slide mentions that actually these are the items that students mentioned in their feedback. And the ticks, actually, some of them are coming from the course design and some of them are coming from AI support of this course. Okay. Sorry, any questions, Stacy? Oh. So based on the feedbacks, it turns out that actually 3 meetings is not enough in 3 different settings. So it is better to have an extra discussion meeting, in-person meeting with the students. But I mean, because of the time restriction, instead of meeting in a week, it is better to meet in after 4 days of the in-person meeting, and then give them some extra 3 days to finalize their work after the extra discussion meeting. So actually, that was the overall findings of myself in this experimental setting. And I believe Max and Chris have more to share.
All right. Hi, my name in Professor Moose's experimental class. And so, yeah, I think, so originally I signed up for this class just as the regular lecture format for Introduction to Cryptography. Professor Moose had mentioned in the first lecture that he wanted to run this experimental class. And it interested me mainly for 2 reasons. One, he mentioned it would be project-based learning. We would have, a project every week, or there would be a project presented every week, and then it was our goal to try and crack that cryptography system that was presented. I thought that project-based learning in general is just really for me. It's why I went to WPI in the first place. I really get a much better handle on learning new concepts when it is hands-on project-based learning. So that aspect of we're making something, the students take it, try to break it. I thought that would be great. Would really help me remember all of the concepts within cryptography and understand it better. And second, he mentioned that it would be primarily a flipped classroom, LLM supported class, which I'm again super interested in as a concept. I've personally been using LLMs for learning as a tool for years at this point, but I never really thought that they were, previously LLMs, have a bad reputation as a cheating tool because they can just give you a bunch of work, might not be very good. You can spit out an essay in a second and it's fine. But I think recently that paradigm has really changed, and they are genuinely getting to the point technologically where it is just a huge lever for productivity. And I think that the point that I really became convinced that they were a tool and not necessarily something that is not that useful or puts out subpar work that passes as okay, was when ChatGPT Deep Research came out. I had previously done one of WPI's other required major projects in my sophomore year. It was the Science and Humanities Crossover Project. So I was in France studying the public transit system in Lyon, where I was staying. And a large part of that was doing a lot of research on the history and also the current state of the transit system. And we probably spent, there was 4 people working for an entire term, a quarter. And we probably spent 30% of our time in that entire quarter just doing research, doing archival research on this transit system. And 6 months later, ChatGPT Deep Research comes out, and it just writes so much better of a report than we did on the research side. At least it found many more resources, especially on the French side. We only had one French speaking member, but that all is to say that as a research tool alone, LLMs have gotten significantly better. Very, very again, just a huge lever for productivity to have what is nearly a master's level student doing, being a research assistant for you. You can type, ask a question, and give it 10, 15 minutes, and it'll have just an awesome, huge report, cited sources, generally very, very accurate. And I think that is something that people, yeah, again, it really convinced me that these are just great tools that are genuinely so useful for learning, especially again in conjunction with project-based learning. And I think specifically in this class, as I said, I was very interested, and I think I kind of just wanted to take it as an exercise to really test if this is true. Can I use ChatGPT as a tutor or as a lecturer to really understand those concepts? And I think that my answer is mostly yes. I think that there were definitely some difficulties. I think that in general, ChatGPT is never going to be perfect. It's never going to have the human aspect of sitting down with somebody and writing it on a whiteboard, writing out some algorithm on a whiteboard for you. So I think it was still important to have the human discussions, talk with other students, talk with Professor Moose about these concepts and verify that the intuitions I learned while working with ChatGPT are correct and align with everything they're trying to teach. But I think that the major takeaway I had from this course is that using ChatGPT as a tutor and just saying, like, hey, I learned this concept in class. How does this other thing I learned apply to that first concept in a way that you just can't necessarily find in a textbook very easily? I think that it's just the open-endedness of effectively having a textbook that answers any specific question you want is something very, 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 very important in the future of education. And I really do think that I will continue using LLMs as a learning tool just because they're only going to improve, and they're only going to get better at explaining these complex topics. And yeah, I think, again, just the open-endedness. I could run in any direction and try anything I wanted with my project, just because I had ChatGPT as a learning partner, as a tutor that could go and find these things and explain things in an intuitive way, especially with topics so complex as cryptography. I was frankly very, very shocked at how well it performed overall. So I think it really, I think this class overall really showed me that this is probably the future, and I think I can actually learn with LLM. So I was happy to have that takeaway, but I think we still have ways to go, but we'll get there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Chris, what were your thoughts?
Hello, I'm Chris. I was also a student in the class, and my thoughts are more so that the project-based learning and AI tools with it definitely gave a much more, I thought, much more focused view of the topics of cryptography that we were learning, more specifically when we were doing our own individual projects. For instance, I did mine on block ciphers. So when I was learning about block ciphers, I wasn't just learning the generic basic structure of them. I was also looking into how to improve the ones that already exist. And that gave me like a very focused like subset to look into. But then still, I didn't know much about cryptography going into the class. So it took, well, at first I didn't really know where to go with it. And that's where I turned to the AI and the LLMs and found a starting point using just asking vague questions to it, and probably got very vague answers, but it gave me a jumping off point, something terms to look into on academic papers and into my textbook of, oh, these are key points that I need to look for, or key points that I need to look further into, and maybe double check the facts that the LLM gave me, because it's like the internet, probably doesn't give everything completely true, and so on and so forth. And so that gave me a much better idea of block ciphers and my topic as a project than I probably would have gotten in a regular lecture-based course, especially for this lecture in particular, where it started off as 100 students in the class, and I think I would not have gotten as much of a personalized education or like experience to myself as I did when we were in a smaller group, working more individually with our presentations and then getting peer feedback. I don't know if this was mentioned already, but almost the entirety of the course was based on peer feedback and review. And I thought that was very important. It's less so about getting like the grade on the homework and more so making sure you're articulating your points well to your peers and getting your points crossed, and helping other people understand how to improve this certain cipher or certain idea. And I think that that's definitely why I think another discussion day would be helpful in the course structure. So yeah.
Great. Yeah.
No,
Thanks for the presentations and also the thoughtful response. And the next part of this will go into a Q&A. And so if anyone have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll go through it in a bit. And I think just to kick things off, I think one of the things that Chris, you mentioned earlier about there are certain things that are actually really essential in the course design. So like these AI tools seems to be like a supporting role, but it's actually fundamentally with peer-to-peer learning is actually really critical. And so I'm curious, also Max as well, from your perspectives, like if now you have a chance to design the course, right? And then think about the things that worked really well in the course and the things that you think you could that could be potentially changed. What would be those things that you would try? And I'm almost curious, like Professor Moosh and also like Dean McNeil's your perspective too. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, if Chris or Max, if you want to share a little bit more.
I can say something is, uh, I I'll praise Max on this. I think his project was one of the coolest ones that any group did. It wasn't just improving a certain cipher, it was giving us more of an achievable goal as attackers of finding backdoors in a weakened system. Uh, so instead of trying to improve RSA, which is, if you don't know, a very strong system and very hard to attack otherwise, it's giving us a more achievable goal that we can discuss easier and work through more together. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's my idea of setting, I don't know, giving smaller goals that we can work towards.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think that my main issue with the course was that it was very easy to just not put in the time that I should have into responding to other people's projects. As Chris said, if we had more defined goals, I guess, if we had a smaller project every week that we like, if we had some competitive project every week where we were working in teams against other teams, a lot in a way that it was more outlined and structured, I think that it would have been a lot. I think that my participation, at least, would have been a lot more consistent. But as it was, I ended up spending probably 2 times more on the class in my last week when I was making my project versus the rest of the time responding to everyone else's projects, when I think that could have been a lot more equal. I think yeah, just with more defined structure on what I'm doing every week, as opposed to I have one big thing 1 week. I think that would work a lot better in general, just because it's hard to find motivated students in the first place, and even the ones that are motivated are usually busy anyway. Especially, other projects just take up my time. So if I don't have anything that's necessarily required, or I'm not in a competitive, it's not a competitive nature, it's going to be hard for me to spend a lot of time when it's not very strict grading, I guess.
Yeah, I'll say that one thing I think that's not changing about education is that every professor assumes you're spending all your time on their course. And that's something that I think probably isn't going to change. But yeah, the idea of crowding out other experiences is always going to be an issue. I want to go back to something that Chris said about being able to explain to other people and the value of the peer interaction. And if you look at where the jobs of the future are still going to be, it's about using the AI tool and then adding value in your interactions with other people. So I think that aspect of this course is great. So anything that you can do in the future to increase those opportunities for interaction can be powerful. Kirksel, I saw another question in the chat about what guidance were students given about how they should or should not use it. And Max, clearly you had a lot of background with AI and large language models, but maybe some of the other students didn't. And Kirksel, I was wondering, were there some people who kind of had needed some guidance to make good use out of AI, or was it pretty much everybody up to speed on it already?
Yep, actually, it's a great question, because in the regular course settings, whenever we integrate AI into our courses, especially in the lecture-based courses or in a project-based learning setting, but with a predefined questions or projects, mostly there are some use of AI in a way that they use it for academic offloading or for integrity purposes, which means they use it in the unintended purposes. But for this course, my main purpose was to assign them open-ended projects so that actually they should find something by themselves, which means even if they ask LLM to prepare the project for them, it's not doable, because the student is going to find a weakness in the project that LLM can help them to find, but it cannot give them the weaknesses. So that's why, I mean, I didn't set any rule on how to use LLM in this course setting, because basically it's not possible for them to use it for cheating or to make the LLM do the work for them. Okay, that was more like amplifying material in the course rather than a cheating mechanism. And that's why I didn't set any rule for the use of LLM.
That's great. Yeah. One thing I think is quite interesting is like when you're designing this course, are there certain kind of assumptions about learning or teaching that you find yourself like rethinking, and how did AI also challenge those kind of assumptions about teaching and learning too?
Yeah. So my assumption at the beginning was the new generation. So we are always going with the generation that we grew up in, which means in my generation, I grew up with lecture-based learning, which means there was always somebody telling me what to do, learning what to do. I mean, telling me what to learn, etc. Those type of things, and giving me some questions to practice, etc. But I mean, the new generation doesn't like these type of strict structures. They like more freedom. They like to talk. They want to explore. So I just want to give them this opportunity in this course, Introduction to Cryptography course. This course is requiring too much background, especially heavy math. And mostly the students are from ECE department or CS department, which means mostly they do not have the required background. So actually, I was like, why not? Let me use them LLMs as they like. And then I want to let them figure out and explore how they can use AI for their own learning. Actually, this is going to be no different in their works when they switch the industry, right? So that was the main motivation for me.
I see. That makes sense. And in a chat, we also have another questions about how can or did more humanities, freshman skills in writing, scaffolding for success skills, this approach to project-based learning. Yeah, so I guess how do you apply project-based learning and AI into these more humanities or more freshman level skill sets and programs? Yeah, think McNeil, if that would be a question
Yeah,
that could
so
be.
I would ask Chris and Max. So Max, you said you already did your junior year project. Chris, you have not done that junior year interdisciplinary project, right? Is that correct?
Yes, I have not done that project yet.
Have you heard any guidance from other students on what their experience has been, and or if there's other PBL experiences where they've used AI?
So I've definitely heard about people just uh, giving AI, like having them given like an outline of kind of points to hit, and then building off of that, moving forward, kind of giving giving structure, and then they put in more of like the personal touches to the writing. But I do think moving forward, I will try to use some of what Max has mentioned of having it come up with like research questions, or using your research questions to come up with research sources to then do that and then do your own looking into, and having it maybe even summarize sources so you can get through more information faster.
Yeah, I've got to say that I've advised a lot of senior projects when Google was coming along back in the 90s and early 2000s, and it sped up background research. Even as a very rudimentary tool, but it still sped up background research tremendously. And when I've been at WPI since 1994. In the old days, students would say, "Oh, it's so hard to find these sources. It's so hard to find." Now it's like you've got no excuse for not doing high quality background research. And Max, the tools you mentioned just make it that much more powerful.
Great. I think one of the questions that educators have is that many people are still figuring out like how to integrate AI into their classrooms, their curriculum. And so what would be some of the advice that you would give to someone who wants to start experimenting with PBL or AI, but still feel like, it's overwhelmed? Like, what are some of the principles or guidelines that when you're designing courses that you start thinking about now? I think that could be a good question for Dean McNeil and Professor Mush.
Yeah, well, I have one final summary slide here that speaks to that a little bit.
Great.
So, as you're looking to integrate project-based learning into any student experience, AI or not, the benefits are there for the students. And then the context of getting students ready for the workplace, this issue of AI, is it a job creator or a job destroyer? The answer is yes, it's going to do both. And getting students ready for that experience in whatever way you can do in whatever course you're teaching is the mindset I would go with. And also, as Kirksel mentioned, the evolution of student learning styles, that you can't prohibit AI. It's going to be out there. I think back to calculators when I was in high school. We've always had the introduction of disruptive educational tools, and AI is more disruptive than most. But it's the world that our students are going into, and we've got to figure out how to use it. I would say some of the takeaways from this course are, so far, it can be an amplifier of the instructor, not a replacement yet for this generation of students. Students still want that instructor interaction, that in-person discussion with their peers, and that's where they're going to be adding value when they're out there in industry using AI. I would say there is an opportunity for development, for improved interaction with the virtual TA and virtual assistants, and maybe Kirksel could speak to that in what he's looking at in the revised course. And Kirksel, what are your thoughts as a professor who's on the ground doing this for for our students today?
Yeah, actually, I agree with you. So it's not possible to avoid AI in the course settings because one way or not, the students are going to use AI tools. I believe we should evolve the course setting in a way that they cannot use AI for cheating, so that whatever they do with AI, they are going to amplify their learning. So which means I believe we need to change our course setups and we need to change how what type of assignments we are giving to students. So in this setting, actually, I try open-ended projects. And I believe it is a bit hard to implement this AI in social sciences and also other, for example, for language learning or for writing. It's not easy to find such projects, but in STEM, it is much easier, I believe. It is much easier to implement similar projects. Yeah.
Sure. Great. Yeah. And I think for Chris and Max, one of the things I think people often thinks about is that like now we have these AI tools almost like a thinking companion and also like research companion. And oftentimes the challenge we see is that we might allocate some of the critical thinking process to AI, right? And then one of the key concern that educators and many students have seems to be that it's overloading or unloading of critical thinking to AI. And so I'm curious from your perspective, from these courses or other courses as well, how the AI tools start to evolve the way you learn, and how do you kind of avoid or strengthen your learning currently to avoid this kind of overload loading of like AI thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually kind of answer that relative to a question that's in the chat about how the project ideas are selected. So in the courses, so in Kirksel's course, he's selecting projects that are relevant to the concepts he's trying to teach for cryptography. For the capstone design projects, those are selected by students, some by faculty. But I will say the projects definitely are more complex now than they were back in the day, because of tools like, well, again, going back to Google, large learning models, because the research side of projects can be done so much more quickly now, the project ideas are more complex. And for the junior year projects like the one Max did in Lyon, those ideas are selected by stakeholders in the local community where the projects are done. And again, they are now expecting more from us because they know we now have access to AI tools. So I would say the projects are more complex, more advanced. And that's another reason for having advisors there, because sometimes students do bite off more than they can chew. And you can keep an eye on how the project is progressing and watch out for that overloading. I think, Kirksel, as you mentioned, adding more feedback in each of the modules is another opportunity to monitor how things are progressing.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And I guess like now we're short on time, but this is great presentation, and really grateful for all of our panelists today and everyone attending today. If you want to learn more about the latest, I guess, experiments and things that are being done, feel free to reach out to me, and then I will also share, I guess, like if our panelists will be willing to like answer more of the questions as well. And if anyone is interested in learning more about our future webinars, feel free to go to our AIX Education website to follow our latest newsletter. We'll be sharing the new webinars and also bi-weekly newsletter there about the latest experiments that people are doing in classrooms. And if you would like to give us some feedback on the workshop, feel free to scan this QR code. And yeah, we'd love to see you at our next webinar. Yep. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.